What is up, Wager Talk people? I'm looking a little gray today. Not sure what the producer's doing with my color. Put me next to these two. We're going to get that worked on here. I am so excited to be back. Bet on it, season 2. I'm Kelly Stewart, your host tonight. We're going to break down this week's, we're going to break down the NFC with VR, Gianni the Greek Gambler, Marco D'Angelo. Thank you guys for tuning in live. Make sure you guys drop your comments, questions in the chat. We're going to try to answer a few of those along the way. Just a couple of weeks till NFL kicks off. This is going to be so awesome. Welcome back, Marco. Welcome back, VR.
Kelly, good to be back. Excited about it. We've been missing football, been missing sports, and it was a very interesting summer to say the least, but here we are. We got sports again and just excited about the NFL and season 2 of Bet On It. Who would have thunk it?
I was so excited to be back, Marco. You mentioned it. VR, sorry, I just cut you off. We're going to have to work on these nonverbal cues as we're not in studio. But the best part about being not in studio is that this is live. We have real odds. We're going off of real time, real bets, and this is going to be so great. VR, happy to have you back. I got to see you just a couple of weeks ago. You've been laying out by the pool. I'm super jealous. I've been doing a lot of things over the summertime, but you guys clearly have been in the gym and working on your tans.
Not anymore. With all these sports that are finally back, they're keeping us very busy. There was a little time there where we pretty much had nothing to do, and it was, when are they going to return? Now they're all here, and again, that's a good time for sports bettors. And with football coming up around the corner, yeah, I'm excited as everyone else is, and I'm glad we're able to do this for another year, even under these unprecedented conditions. But got some winners for the watchers and listeners out there, and hopefully we have a good season ahead.
That is the plan this season. All of our odds are presented by Superbook Sports at Superbook Sports on Twitter, aka our friends over at the Westgate. I've got my Westgate app open right now just so I can make sure we can give you guys up-to-date odds. Today's show is going to be a deep dive into all things NFC. As I mentioned, drop your questions below. We'll get to the AFC next week. And then right after that, we're talking week 1 of NFL. I am so happy football is going to be back. All right, guys, we're going to start off with my favorite division in football, the NFC North. We're going to talk about the Vikings, the Packers, the Bears, the Lions. I want to know where you guys are putting your money, where the value is. And I want to kind of talk about some long shots here. Marco, VR, I got both of your plays. Both of you guys are on the Minnesota Vikings. VR, you got in a little earlier than Marco. You got him at 2-1. Current odds plus 150 at Superbook. Marco, talk to me about the Minnesota Vikings and why you think they're going to win the NFC North.
Well, Kelly, first thing, this year, this is an unprecedented season, what we're dealing with, because teams didn't have mini camps. They have training camp, but they're not having preseason games. So for me, looking for teams out of the gate that are going to be sharp, I want to go with teams that have everything in order. Same coaching staff, same system. You're not trying to learn a new system on the fly, new coaching staff. And when it comes to the NFC North, it's all about Minnesota and your favorite coach. We know that you have a man crush on Coach Zimmer, and I can't get in front of that. I'm sorry. I'm not going to break the two of you up. He has got his system in place. He's got his quarterback, Kirk Cousins, who, slayed a couple of the dragons that he's had. The knock on Kirk Cousins has been he can't win the big game. Well, he won a couple primetime games, and more importantly, he did win a playoff game last year, and that's the stepping stone, I think, to this season. Yes, they lost in the second round of the playoffs when they went to San Francisco and ran into that buzzsaw, but he did go into the Superdome, took care of the Saints, knocked them out of the playoffs, and I think this is the season for them. And when we get to the other team in this division that actually won the division last year, I think they're going to regress after last year. They put up numbers that the stats just didn't support. They shouldn't have had the win-loss record that they had. So I'm all in on the Vikings.
I'm glad you are too. You mentioned Coach Zimmer, one of the best ATS coaches in the NFL, and that is why I do have a crush on him. Listen, all jokes aside, that's the truth. I want coaches that care about covering. Now, maybe he knows the spread, maybe he doesn't, maybe he's just gutsier on some of those 4th and goal plays. Whatever it is, I like those type of coaches, especially underdogs that went outright in the Superdome during the playoffs. VR, talk to me. You bet the Vikings early on. Was that just a play on a number, or were you convinced this Vikings team's going to win the NFC North?
It's because I got involved on a couple season win totals in this division. I haven't placed a lot. I placed like 6 season win totals so far, and I think 3 of them are in this division. And it just made sense that after those season win totals were bet, it left the Minnesota Vikings out of the loop, meaning I think Green Bay's going to regress. I think Chicago's even going to regress. And even though I think Detroit's going to be better than they were last year, they were a 3-win football team, so they're not going to be any risk to the team at the top. Here's the thing with Minnesota. They should have won more games last year. They outscored their opponents by over 100 points the entire season, well more than the 13-3 Green Bay Packers. But things just didn't go their way. Luck plays a huge role in the NFL because there's a small sample size of games. By week 4, 25% of their season's over. That's a very small sample size. And what we have with the Minnesota Vikings is a team that went 2-4 in a division that just wasn't really that good. Again, Green Bay was 13-3, but that was as fake of a 13-3 as you're ever going to see. We'll talk about that when we touch on some season win totals. But they faced nobody. They faced no quarterbacks at all. That's going to change this year. Again, I like Minnesota. I don't think much is going to change as far as them regressing. I think they could actually take a step forward from last year. And finally, analytics, if you take a look, dig a little deep, they were a top 10 offense and defense, according to Football Outsiders, DVOA. Both of those top 10. That's a rarity. So I think this team is definitely poised to win the NFC North. And with the other teams expected to do what they're going to do, I think getting 2-1 on my money was a good bet to make.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. This Packers team, and we'll get to it more with season win totals, plus $2 basically right now at the Superbook. I don't think there's a ton of value there. Maybe at $2.50, $3, I would consider making it a play. But I do have my concerns with the quarterback battle that has been so talked about in the media. Does it really affect Aaron Rodgers? Does it not? VR, I'm going to kick it back to you to talk about the Packers first. Then I'll let Marco give his opinion. But I have to agree with what you guys both initially said here with the Vikings. I think they are the play. I do think there's a longer shot, maybe worth a little VR sprinkle. We'll get to that at the end of the NFC. I kind of want to go down in order. VR, tell me what you think about the Packers plus 200.
Yeah, I honestly, they could get lucky again. But what they did last year was just, they defied probability, meaning you look at their close games. They were 8-1 in games that were decided by 1 score or less, undefeated 2-0 in field goal games. They had a pretty easy schedule. And more importantly, what I was talking about prior was, who did they face as far as quarterbacks? Kyle Allen, Daniel Jones, Matt Moore. What other names did I have on that list? Dwayne Haskins, David Blau, Mike Lennon, a bunch of backups, a bunch of guys stepping in for injuries. Again, everything went perfectly for them. They didn't have to deal with injuries pretty much nowhere except at the wide receiver position. Everywhere else, they were healthy. And again, to repeat that when your season's going to get a lot more difficult, to me, it doesn't look too good, too promising. They're playing some of the most difficult rush defenses. If they can't get that run game going, there's going to be a lot of pressure on that passing game. And when you become one-dimensional in the NFL, it becomes a lot easier for teams, even though it's 2020 and it's a passing league. So I gave it away already. I went under on season wins for Green Bay, and I do see a regression for them.
I should have known VR was not going to be able to stick to the script. That's okay.
I couldn't keep it.
I totally get it. It makes sense. Marco, so when we listen to the guys in the media, which is something we've talked about before, I try not to buy into too much of what those guys are saying. I actually try not to watch too much because I don't want it to negatively affect what I'm feeling about a certain team, because there are guys on TV that I do respect and I think that they have valuable opinions, but I need to stick with what I know in my numbers. When we're hearing about this quarterback battle of sorts or the drama with Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love, how much do you put into that? Do you buy into the hype? Do you think that it's going to somehow light a fire under Aaron Rodgers' ass and he's just going to come out and have some great game? I mean, these are things that are really interesting to me from a sports perspective.
Yeah, first of all, Aaron Rodgers, he's a great quarterback, but he's a prima donna. Let's face it. He got McCarthy run out of Green Bay. And last year, everything went right. You had a new coach. Maybe part of it was that, they didn't know what to expect with the game plans with LaFleur, and Aaron Rodgers was happy because he got things to go his way. 13-win season. What's going to happen if things don't go well like they did last year? Is he going to start, complaining again? Will he have that same drive that he had last year? Because obviously he had something to prove. He wanted to prove it was McCarthy and not him. Now, here's my thing, and this is the biggest indicator. They won 13 games last year, all right? And they are one of the most public teams in all of football. We know that. Everybody likes to bet Green Bay. Vegas brought the season win total out at 9. They won 13 games last year. That right there tells you what the experts think of the Green Bay Packers. And I agree 100%. This team will have a major regression. VR touched upon it. Wins last year, they had 9 of their wins were decided by 8 points or less. That's one possession games. Everything felt right for them, and they had an easy schedule. And again, you can't belabor the point of they caught teams when they did face a good them in case in point was when they played Kansas City on the road, there was no Patrick Mahomes. Everything fell right last year. It's not going to happen this year. And guys, if LaFleur game plans didn't know how to prepare for him last year, well, guess what? You've got a year of tape. So now teams will be better prepared for what Green Bay is going to do this year. In the Jordan Love situation, Aaron Rodgers has been there before. He was the guy that was drafted when there was a guy named Brett Favre there. Live with it. There's going to be a guy someday that's going to take your job. Is it going to be Jordan Love? We don't know. But their draft this year puzzled everybody. Green Bay's going to regress. You can take that to the bank. As my buddy BR would say, bet it till you run out of money.
Okay. I always love those VR sayings. Look, okay, this was really interesting. So when I wrote this script on Monday, the Bears were plus 325 at the Superbook. Lions were 5-1. They're now both plus 450. This is going to be interesting. I'm shocked to see it. I want to hear what Marco has to say about this Bears team. I was very low on the Bears last year. Now we have a Bears quarterback battle. Do we not? It sounds like Trubisky will be the starter week 1. How quickly do they move to Nick Foles? This Bears team could start out 1-3. This Bears team could start out 3-1. Most of these early games for them are lined very closely. So I'm excited to see here how they step up in terms of this quarterback battle, who they end up choosing. I like Matt Nagy as a coach. I do think that he shows some promise. I think this Bears defense is excellent. But to win the NFC North, to now be plus 450 and tied with the Lions, am I missing something here? Marco, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Chicago is going to be improved this year. You look at them last year, again, one of the best defenses in the NFL. And when you talk about defenses and you talk about a defense that has to support a mediocre offense and they still get the job done, that defense is that much above head and shoulders of everybody else because they're on the field for more plays. Chicago, they're inconsistent on offense. Mitchell Trubisky, I'm not a fan, and I don't think he'll survive the season. I can tell you this much. He's not going to have a lot of time. You said, do they get off to a 3-1 start or do they get off to a 1-3 start? he will not have an opportunity to get off to a 1-3 start. If they're in a slow start, they're not going to let the season slip away again. That's why they brought in Nick Foles. Is Nick Foles the savior? Probably not, but he's a major upgrade when he's coming off the bench. If he doesn't have the starting job, no pressure on him, takes over for Trubisky if he struggles, I see this Bear offense being much better. And if they can generate anything offensively with the defense they have, they can make a lot of noise in this division. Because as I said, I expect Green Bay to take a step backwards. Minnesota is the favorite for me in this division. And we know the Lions, every year we get sucked into it. You know, the hype is this the year they're going to improve. I haven't seen it. I like the Bears, and I'll be there with some wagers on the Bears when we get to the end of the show.
All right, VR, my question for you is, the Bears went from plus 325 to plus 450 in the matter of 2 days. Do you have anything that you can report there? Anything that maybe you saw on your end, and your thoughts on the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, I could tell you with certainty that there's a lot of sharp money on the under for the Bears season wins. That's why you're seeing this adjustment. And the reason for that, I think, has to do, believe it or not, with the Foles situation. They gave up a lot to Jacksonville for that to happen. And there were some other quarterbacks out there, you know, Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, that Andy Dalton, guys that went away for nothing. But more importantly, that tells you what the Bears are going to do. There's going to be a quarterback controversy. The problem was Trubisky had a good sophomore year. He came after that first year. He looked phenomenal. Remember going into last year, the Bears were the team, the sexy pick. Everyone was betting them over season wins. Everyone was talking about how good Trubisky looked in his sophomore year. Now they have an offense to go with that defense, but it was all phony as a $3 bill. And I just don't think they've done all that much to change it. Their schedule isn't getting much harder, so that's not a problem. It's not like they had bad luck last year. I think they were 0 in net takeaways or in turnovers. It's just they aren't that good. The team they've put together, again, it's just these pieces haven't played well. That's the bottom line. Like Marco touched on, the defense has played well, definitely as far as stats go, but being able to win football games is a completely different story. And I think this offense is just going to continue to have problems. And more importantly, again, the Foles situation, stepping out and grabbing Foles, being that aggressive, you're now going to create controversy. Chicago is a big city. It's not a small town. That's the last thing you need is controversy before a season even starts. Just imagine if Trubisky throws 3 interceptions and they start off 0-2 or even 1-1, but he plays terrible. That is not good news for Chicago fans. I'm telling you now, I don't like the move. I agree with the sharp money betting against Chicago. So that's me and Marco disagree a little bit here. We'll see how it turns out.
I love it. VR week 1 already bringing back phonies a $3 bill. The Detroit Lions plus 450. I was trying to catch up in the chat. Several comments here talking about the Detroit Lions. Now, I'm not high or low on the Detroit Lions. We'll get to the regular season win total here in a little bit. But VR, do you think it's worth a sprinkle here, plus 450? We saw this one come down from 5-1 now to plus 450. Do you think that's just Detroit fans flying into the Westgate betting this team? I mean, I'm trying to make sense of this. This Lions team, I do think will be improved from last season. I don't think they're going to win the NFC North.
That's the problem, that you're asking for too big of a jump. I do think they are going to be improved. This team was so injured last year. In fact, they were in top 10% of most injuries as far as those cluster injuries. They had it on, obviously they dealt with it at quarterback. You didn't even have your main guy for half the season, but running back, wide receiver, tight end, the defensive line, everybody was hurt on that team at one point or another. And again, improving off of 3 wins isn't all that difficult to do. You're not asking for all that much. but asking them to win a division, now I think that's a little bit too much. Again, we'll talk about season win totals. You may be able to make some money there, but that 4-1, even 5-1, again, they're live, but I don't think they're live enough to win that division.
All right, great stuff. Marco, your thoughts on our favorite guy, Johnny Detroit, his Lions team. I've kind of written off the Lions recently. I think that there's some times where they provide some value. Thanksgiving, no Matthew Stafford, David Blau becoming the starting quarterback. We see the line move 7 points. Those kind of interesting things, or with the overreaction of the line. But otherwise, this Lions team has not been a team I want to get behind. They're so frustrating sometimes, their style of play. Your thoughts? Are they worth the sprinkle here? I know we're going to talk about the regular season win total, but at all, plus 450? Can I get you to bite if I gave you a $100 bill?
No. I'll take the $100 bill and I'll go out to dinner. All right. And our good friend Johnny Detroit, I know he's watching, and I'm sorry. I'm going to burst your balloon right away because it happens every year. There's excitement with the Lions because why? Because everybody makes every excuse in the world why they didn't win last year. You got Stafford hurt. You had all those close games at the beginning of the year that you came up just short on. You know what? There's a reason you keep coming up short. First of all, I'm not impressed with Patricia as the head coach. He hasn't shown me anything yet. And here's where we should really have the over-under. Not the season win total, not or the yes or no for the playoffs. At what week of the season does Johnny Detroit tweet out the Charlie Brown pull the football meme where, you fooled me again? Because it's going to happen. I'm not buying into the Lions. I don't like them. Defense has not progressed. And when he came over from New England, I thought Patricia was a defensive guru. I haven't seen any of that in any of his Lions teams. Now, to his defense, it's hard when you lose Stafford and you can't keep the offense on the field. The defense is going to play too many downs. Another problem the Lions have had year in and year out is they never can establish a running game. You got to get in some balance. You can't just throw the football all over the field. They lost Megatron, finally retired, last year, and they were still putting up good numbers without him. I thought it made Stafford a better quarterback because it made him read the entire field instead of always looking for Megatron. That was a plus, but they still have too many holes on this team. Will they be better than last year? Yeah, they can't possibly be any worse. So, yeah, they're going to be better. They have some key players there that they can win. But I'm sorry, Johnny. Is it going to be week 3, 4, 5? When are you sending it out? Charlie Brown's coming. They're pulling the football out.
6.5, Marco. 6.5 weeks before we get that tweet from Johnny Detroit. All right, let's move over to the NFC South. Saints minus 125 to win that division on Monday. Now minus 140. We saw a big jump here. Marco, I'm going to kick it back to you. Are the Saints the play here to win the NFC South? I know a lot of love coming in for the Bucs and Tom Brady.
Yeah, I know. And you look at the Saints, they had a great regular season last year. You finally thought everything was going to be in place. This is a team that, if you remember the previous couple years, got to the playoffs and then had the most heartbreaking losses any team could have in the playoffs. Everything was in place. They had home field advantage. They were going to be playing in the dome. They weren't going to have to go on the road and get a bad call at an end of a game. And what happens? In comes Minnesota and beats them. Now, last year, Drew Brees had a break during the season. The injury sidelined him for, 5 or 6 games. Teddy Bridgewater came in and did a fabulous job. It kept this team alive. And Brees, as much as I like Brees, they're not as good when they're throwing the football all over the field. Yeah, they're going to put up points, but then that defense is right back out on the field. And the game I go back to and I think over and over again, maybe it's because I lost a heartbreaker in that one. You always remember those ones that sting. But that San Francisco Saints game in the Superdome, when both teams went up and down the field, that was one of the best games of the season. It was a fun game to watch unless you had the Saints, and it was a heartbreaker. But that's not what I want to see of the Saints. What they did when they had Bridgewater in there is it was a more controlled offense. They weren't throwing the ball all over the field. They did throw the ball, but they ran the football. They had a better balance. And I think that's the key. And it actually made their defense look better. And if they can do that, they're going to be the team to beat again. I'm not going to drink the Kool-Aid. We'll get to Tampa Bay in a moment. But the Saints are the favorite to win the division for a reason. They've got the pieces in place. But you don't have that insurance policy of Teddy Bridgewater this year. Oh, wait, you went out and signed Jameis Winston. Okay, 30 interceptions. But he is a dynamic player. So if something does happen to Breeze, they can bring Jameis Winston in, and they will still be able to move the ball. They might have to just move it more because he might spot the other team a touchdown or two.
Jameis is going to be really interesting now that he's had eye surgery. We'll see how that plays out. You're right. Teddy Bridgewater was an immaculate backup for it last year for the Saints. Let's kick it over to VR. VR, you laid 105 with the Saints back when the lines first came out. As I mentioned, was minus 125. Now it's minus 140. I think what's starting to happen here in this last couple of weeks is everybody says, okay, now we're having a football season. Now I feel comfortable making these bets. And we're seeing certain teams tick up a little bit. Your thoughts on the New Orleans Saints? I know this is kind of a team you've been high on over the last few years. Kind of some drama surrounding this team. Maybe it's now past enough. Maybe hopefully everybody's getting along in the locker room. But I kind of had a feeling there maybe for a little bit, hey, maybe Drew Brees is going to get sacked a few more times this year because he said some things that his teammates didn't agree with. Whether you agree with it or not, side subject, but I kind of thought it was interesting. You never want to have that tension in your locker room. The idea is the quarterback is in a leadership position. Everybody else kind of falls in line. So really interesting there from the Saints.
Here's what I can tell you. I'm a little confused on this Saints team as far as what to do with futures and season win totals. We know what to do with them on a weekly basis. You probably want to fade them at home because they've been overvalued there, and you want to bet them on the road where for years now everyone thinks they're at a disadvantage because they're a dome team. That's where they're faster. Breeze can't play well outdoors, but none of the data reflects that. In fact, all the data reflects the opposite. No teams covered more games against the spread than the New Orleans Saints on the road over the last 6 or 7 years. This team's been a monster on the road, and yet they haven't been profitable at home. So that's what you do as far as week by week. The problem is we're talking season wins and futures. Now, the Saints, you expect them to regress, and I think that's why you have this conflict with a lot of the sharp groups, because they went under on season win totals when the line went up immediately. And I saw that coming. I didn't piggyback it, and I didn't even release it to my guys because I wasn't sure if I even liked it. I knew why they were betting it, and it was how well they did with turnovers last year. Yeah, I've been betting for these guys for so long. I know what they look at. And one of the things that stuck out for me, for the Saints, the most, besides schedule, besides anything else, it's turnovers. They were plus 15 in turnover differential. But here's the key. They were able to capture 5x the amount of fumbles that they lost. Think about that. So the ball fell on the ground. It's a fumble. There's a 50-50 chance who's going to pick it up. And they were able to pick it up 5 times more than their opponent could. Now, that's randomness. There's nothing you could drill and practice and learn how to do that year after year. So when I saw that, their takeaways, that differential, I knew they were going to look to fade them on season win totals. The problem is this team's still loaded, and they're going to be hard to beat in the division. And more importantly, with Tampa Bay having the upgrade now and being the sexy new pick, now you have a new focus in New Orleans. That's where I have the conflict. So for me, there's no reason to risk my money, really, if I don't feel I'm getting the best of it. So I got out ahead, betting them to win the division. I thought that's where the money was going to come in. But again, it wasn't a bet I felt comfortable enough to share with people that trust me for my opinion, because I knew the reasoning behind it, and it wasn't a strong enough reason alone.
All right, Marco, in the chat, Drew Martin just made a really good point. This is something you guys have both touched on before. If the Saints elect to play with no fans, how much are we going to downgrade them from no home field advantage? We know they're one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. I haven't heard specifically from the Saints. I actually just tried to Google it if they had made an announcement. Some stadiums say, hey, we're going to play with 25%. Some say for sure, like here in Las Vegas, we're playing with no. But interesting enough, your thoughts on this Saints team? Are they the team to beat? And how are you going to grade them in terms of home field advantage?
Well, Kelly, definitely this is going to be something different for all of us to deal with this year with the fans and not the fans. Here's the thing. Will the Saints, if they don't have fans, will they still pipe in some noise to simulate the home crowd? That's an option as well. Do you downgrade it? Yeah. How much? Probably less than normal home field, but it would still be better of a home field than we saw the Chargers and the Rams have the last 2 seasons playing where they were playing. That's how I'm going to look at it.
Very good point. That is a great point, Marco. I'm going to stick with you. The Bucks now plus 160. VR mentioned, you're absolutely right. Who's a sexy pick for everybody this year? That's right. It's Tom Brady. It's Gronk. It's Mike Evans. It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll get to their season win total here in just a little bit. But plus 160, it looks like the bookmakers, as you and I like to talk about, are kind of trying to trap people into betting the Bucks here. Marco, your thoughts on if the Bucks are worth the play?
Kelly, every single year there's one team that is the offseason darling that's all you hear about nonstop. We had it a few years ago with San Francisco with Jimmy G because he finished that season 5-0 at the end of the season against teams that really didn't care. They weren't focused on playing the 40.
Not on this show.
But this is a spot. Then you had last year. Who was the sexy pick? Oh, second year, Baker Mayfield, the Cleveland Browns, blah, blah, blah. What'd we do? We lined up and made money going against them early on. Well, guess what? Circle the wagon. Get on the bandwagon right now because we're going to be going against Tampa Bay early on because they're going to be overpriced and overhyped. And the one thing I said when we opened the show, this is a season where you didn't have mini camps. You're not getting preseason. And I know Tom Brady never played much in the preseason, but if there was ever a preseason that he was going to need to get reps, it was going to be in the first year of Bruce Arians' offense.
Not to cut you off, but really quick, that is what Andrew's asking in the chat. Do you think it favors the totals here? Do you think it favors the underdogs, sloppy offenses? Because now that you mentioned that, you're right. Tom Brady, in the past, he'd play 1 or 2 snaps, right? There was no reason. Belichick didn't want to show anything. But now with this new offense, and especially given certain situations, we know he's been practicing with this team for a few months. How does that who does that favor here?
Well, to me, it's a disadvantage for Tampa Bay. He's going to need to get into game shape and learn the offense. Last year, we all had fun with Jameis Winston in the 30 interceptions. There's a reason he had 30 interceptions. Yes, a lot of that goes directly to Jameis Winston. But Bruce Arians' offense is a high-risk, high-reward offense. If you go back every place he's been, and that's even, I'm going to go back to Big Ben with the Steelers. The first year in his offense, quarterbacks have their highest turnover rate because they're throwing the football more than they usually do, and he is not afraid to go for the big play. He wants to go downfield. Again, risk to reward. Yes, they're going to have plenty of big plays, and the offense is going to look flashy, but you're taking chances. So Tom Brady, for everything he's done at New England, that New England offense was never an offense where you saw Brady chucking it 40, 50 times a game. They played control. They had the short, and whenever he did throw the football, he wasn't going downfield deep. He used his tight ends, Gronk, and, guys there. They used ball control in the passing game. The short passing game was really an extension of their running game. That's not going to be the case in this offense. It's a different terminology. There's going to be growing pains. And because of the hype, you're going to get value betting against Tampa Bay early on. So, yes, you're going to have turnovers, which turnovers, people always say, all right, where is that turnover going to lead to? Is it going to lead to the over or is it going to lead to the under? Well, that's simple. Tell me where the turnover is going to occur, and I'll tell you where it's going to lead. If the turnover happens after you have an 8-play drive and you're inside the other team's 20, well, then it's going to hurt the over. It's going to help your under. But if he's turning it over on your side of the field, then it's going to, help the overs. The one thing that I will say about Tampa Bay from last year, at the end of the season, it surprised me how well their secondary had improved. The defense was playing better over the last several weeks of the season. If they get more balance on offense, it's going to help that defense for two reasons. One, they'll be on the field for less plays. And two, just because the younger players are starting to get the system. So I do think Tampa Bay will be a good play the second half of the season, but they're not going to be in the first half of the season. You're going to pay too much of a premium for them. I'm going to look at ways to make money going against Tampa Bay, and that's obviously looking at season win totals, because if they do get off to that slow start, it hurts the season win total. And, of course, on the weekly basis, trying to find live dogs when they're going to be a favorite when they maybe shouldn't be, or too many points.
I'm on board with you, Marco. VR, your thoughts on Tampa Bay. What do you agree with Marco? What do you disagree with Marco? And at plus 160, do you think the Bucs are worth a play?
Hashtag fade away for the Bucs. Just start fading and don't stop fading. Listen, this team, here's the bottom line. Believe it or not, they were lucky last year. Things went well for them. As far as injured, they were the most injured team, or only one or two teams dealt with more injuries than they did in 2018. In 2019, they had the biggest reversal of fortune. They were the second healthiest unit in all of the NFL. So this team didn't have to deal with injuries. That's not going to happen 2 years in a row. It's just that kind of sport. We know that. So you have to deal with that. Then you have to deal with, they're now going to have a very, very difficult schedule. They're facing the second most difficult pass defenses, the top 15 rush defenses, the top 10 pass offenses, top 10 rush. Only the rush offenses, I think, are weak. That's not going to be a big deal. But again, a lot has changed for this team, and not in the positive. The only thing positive is they added Brady, they added Gronk. Again, they didn't really have trouble throwing the football. They threw it to the wrong team, obviously. That was a problem. But they were able to throw the ball. They led the league in yards and passing. So, the wide receivers lit it up. Jameis threw for a lot of yards. Okay, Brady's going to come in there, be more efficient. I get it. But is that going to all of a sudden turn into a bunch of wins and have you covering a bunch of spreads when you're overvalued? Also, the rest of the division now is focused on you, too. They're not just overlooking that Tampa Bay team on the schedule. So a lot's got to line up for them to do what people expect. I agree with Marco. They're the Cleveland Browns of last year. And when we get to the AFC, I have the Cleveland Browns of this year as well.
Oh, I like it, VR. All right, real quick, just to jump in the chat. At Shank Golfer, wait, VR, are you saying we may have a new $3 bill in the Bucs? I think he's a Chiefs fan, so I think he's really excited to have a new $3 bill team, even though the Chiefs absolutely demolished you on that one. I am going to stick with you, though. I'm going to ask you about the Atlanta Falcons, because I know Marco has a little thought process of his own on the Falcons. Give me your quick synopsis on what do you think the Falcons currently 10-1 at the Superbook here in Las Vegas?
Honestly, man, ever since the Falcons lost the Super Bowl in the second half to the New England Patriots, it's been a team on the decline. It's like you kind of look for bright spots. You want to find bright spots because there's a couple here and there, but for some reason, they're a 500 team. And I really don't see that changing all that much because of the fact the divisions isn't getting any easier. We said, Tampa, again, not a team you want to bet. There's a difference between winning and covering. We live in a world where you got to lay 11-10. So that's what we talk about here. And when it comes to covering, it's a different story. But as far as teams getting better, we know Tampa's going to be improved with Tom Brady. New Orleans is New Orleans. Carolina should have a better year than last. So for Tampa, for Atlanta, I don't see what they've done that is going to really propel this team forward to surpass New Orleans, to surpass Tampa, and even slow down Carolina, who's on their heels. So nothing to get all excited about with the Atlanta Falcons. It's just one of those mid-tier 500 teams.
Oh, that is not what Marco D'Angelo wants to hear. Marco texted me earlier. He has a play on the Falcons at 10-1. Marco D'Angelo, state your case. VR saying this team's not a 500 team.
I'm saying, yeah, bet them under. Bet them under.
Yeah, well, I'm taking him as my long shot to win this division. I'll take that 10-1. We got to go out on the limb somewhere, and this is where I'm going to do it. Yes, this team has not been the same since that Super Bowl collapse. That Super Bowl was just a few years ago. This team right now, and I know Matt Ryan, Matty Ice, sometimes the ice melts a little bit with him, but he still can throw the football. And he's got two receivers that I think could be the best tandem in the NFL in Jones and Ridley. These two guys are dynamic, and we know how good Jones is, and that only makes Ridley that much better because Jones is going to get all of the double teams. They went out and they picked up Todd Gurley. Now, this is the X factor. What Todd Gurley are we going to get? Are we going to get the 2019 version, or are we going to get the 2018 version? If he is somewhere in between, this is going to help this team, because if they have any kind of running attack with that passing attack, I think this is a team that's going to surprise a lot of people. The other thing that I liked about Atlanta is Dan Quinn was a dead man walking last year. This team sucked the first half of the season. There's no way to sugarcoat it. And it was basically a foregone conclusion that he was going to be out. They didn't make the move during the season. But what ended up happening? His team played hard for him. They kept him his job. They went 6-2 down the stretch. And yeah, you could say, well, it was the end of the year. You know, maybe they caught some teams that it didn't matter, that they weren't playing. This team played with focus and desire, and they showed that they wanted Dan Quinn. I think they build off of that and take it into this season. If the Saints have any regression, which there are, Father Time's catching up to Drew Brees. We know that Father Time's undefeated. He's never lost a battle. And I think Tampa is way overrated. And the other team in this division, it's a total rebuild year. That gives me a team that showed promise, that was just a couple years removed from a Super Bowl, that I can take a shot at 10-1. I'll do it. I like Atlanta, and I like them on season win totals over. I think they're too low for what the talent is on this team. Let's take a look at the Atlanta Falcons.
All right, Marco, we touched on the Carolina Panthers and Teddy Bridgewater just a little bit when we spoke about the Saints. 30-1. You have a monster running back. You have a talented athletic quarterback. How do we not take a shot here at 30-1? I know it's an insane long shot, but maybe like $100 bill just in case? Tell me your thoughts, Marco, on the Carolina Panthers.
Well, first of all, let me tell you, you've got the man crush on Coach Zimmer. I've had the man crush on Coach Rule from the time he was at Temple to going to Baylor.
Yeah, he was a great ATS coach.
Absolutely. He gets his team to play. They don't make mistakes. But this is a big jump going from the college ranks to the NFL. Now, I know everybody's going to be a little bit higher that he can make the jump because we saw Kingsbury do it last year. You know, there was some success in Arizona. Nobody expected that. But that was a little bit different. He was running a different style of offense that the NFL not used to seeing, that college type of offense on the pro level. This year, as I said it with a couple of the other teams, this is a team that would have needed minicamp. This is a team that would have needed to have those preseason games. You've got an entire new coaching staff, a new quarterback. Everything's new. This team is going to need to learn the system and grow into it. And the problem when you have new stuff is there's going to be growing pains. Key loss on defense, losing, slipping my mind at the moment, but their great defensive player. This is a team that, for me, this is a rebuild season. Will they be competitive? Yes. I'll find some spots for them in the dog roll because they will surprise some teams here and there. And I'm a big fan of Teddy Bridgewater. I'm glad he's getting a chance to start again in the NFL. He deserves it. He did nothing wrong in Minnesota. Unfortunate, injury for him. Had to move on. Got a chance last year to showcase his talents when he subbed it for Drew Brees and did extremely well, and it got him a contract. Now it's his turn. He's got that running back in Christian McCaffrey that takes a lot of pressure off the quarterback. It's going to make any quarterback look better when you've got a solid running game. Think of the things they can do off play action with Teddy Bridgewater back there and Christian McCaffrey. It will pose some problems for teams later on, but early on, this team's going to need to learn the system. And I think that there's better teams in this division than them right now, but let them get off to the slow start because then the public will overreact and we'll find that value second half of the season with these teams with the new coaches.
All right, VR, your thoughts on Teddy Bridgewater and the Carolina Panthers. I agree with everything Marco said. I think there's going to be spots here and there, but I still, man, a 30-1. I'm looking at this going, you know what? Teddy Bridgewater knows that Saints system. They can get a win over that Saints team. I know that they'll be a sizable underdog, but maybe they can snag one at home. Same thing with the Bucs and the Falcons. I'm looking at this team, and I know we'll talk about their regular season win total, but at 30-1, is that even their true odds? Is that price too low? Am I reading too far into this?
Yeah, buy crypto with that money. You got a better shot of it increasing than making money on Carolina. Listen, you got a rookie head coach, a rookie offensive coordinator, a rookie defensive coordinator, all new guys. It's going to take a while. And under these conditions that we had this year, it's even worse. What time do you have to really gel? We know how difficult it's been for us. Imagine running football teams and coordinating hundreds of people. And now you have a new system, new coaches. You got to even get to know everybody first. So it's just asking way too much. And there's just a lot ahead of you, and this is a team that's regressed since 2017 when they went 11-5. 2018, they won 7 games. 2019, they won 5 games. So now expecting them to make a leap, maybe they'll double their win total, which is almost impossible. But even then, you're only getting them to 10 wins, and that still may not be enough to win this division. So I just think there's better places to put that money. Even if you want to just take a long shot, I think there's better long shots than Carolina.
Awesome stuff, guys. Loving this new format of the live show. Drop your questions in the chat. But before we get to the other 2 divisions we're going to discuss today, got to take a quick commercial break. You guys got to check out and see what Minty Betts has to say. Maybe even our producer Joe throws me in a couple of these.
I got kids to feed.
Football is here, and the Gold Sheet, the nation's oldest sports betting newsletter, is back for its 63rd year, bigger and better than ever. Gold Sheet has a new, improved web-based, mobile-friendly format that includes all of the winning information you rely on with the easiest access ever. While the format is new, all of the features you are accustomed to are still there. That's right, analysis on every pro and college game, key release selections, updated power ratings on every team, point spread logs for all NFL and college teams, and all college football games through May 2021 will be included. To celebrate joining the Wager Talk family, we are offering our subscribers our best deal ever. Sign up for a season of any Gold Sheet product and get $200 in Wager Bucks as a bonus. Wager Bucks can be used to purchase handicapping information from any of our 40-plus experts on Wager Talk or sportsmemo.com. Head to goldsheet.com/wagertalk for any subscription and bonus details.
Want up-to-the-minute scores and odds direct from Las Vegas? Then check out our Wager Talk odds page. You'll get all the latest lines along with moves as they happen from all the biggest books in Las Vegas, including Westgate Superbook, Circa, Golden Nugget, Wynn, Stations, CG, and South Point, just to name a few. Best of all, it's absolutely free.
Your face, NFC East time. Let's start off with the Cowboys, now minus 140. VR, I know you had a play on this team early on. I know you're absolutely unloaded on this team, so I'm sure we're going to get into them here, as well as the regular season win totals. VR, why are you so high on the Dallas Cowboys?
I'm all in on Dallas this year. Yeah, that's the team I chose for the NFC. Every year I choose an NFC team, an AFC team. I bet my future. I know it's a difficult market. The hold's so high. You probably shouldn't be betting teams to win the Super Bowl, but I still do it every year because it's enjoyable for me. And I like Dallas this year. Listen, I like the change. Again, I don't know if I'm a year too early. As the season's about to approach, I'm starting to worry I may be a year too early. But I just thought there was a ton of value there. They were close to 20-1 to win the Super Bowl. I got in at 17-1. They're up to down to 15-1, I think. There's still some value there. Their schedule has gotten a lot easier, number one. Number two, we know how loaded they are on the offensive side of the football. Number three, their defense. The question was the secondary. They were up front. They put the pressure on the quarterback where you didn't, even if your secondary had some weaknesses, they were able to get away with it. But it tended to burn them. That won't happen no more. Shored up a little bit, tightened up there, not going to put as much pressure on that front. And I think that's going to give them even a better season because of that, not having to do it all by themselves. That upgrade, again, coupled with that receiving core, which as long as Dak stays healthy, that's what I need. Obviously, in the NFL, to hit a future, you need your team to stay healthy. Looking at season win totals, why I went over on Dallas Cowboys or why I like Dallas in this division, why I bet Dallas to win the division, win the Super Bowl, go over season win totals. The one-score game stuck out the most. Number one, coming into the season, just how bad they played in one-score games. Most of us know to look at that. You expect a team to progress or regress based on that. And then, offense was a top 5 offense. Number 2 DVOA, I think. It was the defense that needed to improve. I think that's going to happen. I like the McCarthy switch. They had to get rid of. I don't even want to. I can't even say his name. You remember before we were going to start this, I wouldn't even mention it. I couldn't understand why they kept him for so long. But I think Dallas is going to take a big step forward. Division's primed to be taken over. I think it's theirs. And some value there because the NFC's strong. You got Seattle, you got New Orleans, some good teams there. Minnesota's. Because of that, Dallas is giving us odds that usually we wouldn't get. Go Cowboys.
Wow, VR super high on the Cowboys, Marco. I'm going to let you talk about the Cowboys, but you guys are going head-to-head here because you have a play on the Eagles plus 150. Marco, I'll let you talk about the Cowboys, then we'll phase it in to my question about your Eagles bet.
Well, there's no question. On paper, Dallas looks like the team to win this division. Hasn't that been the case the last couple of years? And they still find a way not to get the job done. Now, there's a saying, is the glass half full or is it half empty? You look at those close losses last year, and that is something that we always look at as handicappers and say, okay, hey, this team was involved in all of these close games. If they just go 500 in these close games, it changes the whole dynamic of their season win total. But I look at it, and to me, I can't get past the fact we criticize Kirk Cousins because he couldn't win a big game. Tell me what big game Dak Prescott has won, okay? This is a guy that's saying he wants a big, big contract. What have you done to deserve it, okay? You're loaded with talent all around you. You got one of the best running backs in football in Zeke Elliott. They went out and got you a world-class receiver in Amari Cooper, which once they got Amari Cooper, it made the entire offense better because now you couldn't key just in on Zeke. You had to respect the passing game. And Amari Cooper, when he went downfield, opened the field up for the secondary receivers on the underneath routes. So this is a team that should have won some of those close games last year. When you have 6 of your 8 losses or by 8 points or less, 4 of them by 4 points or less, at some point in time, somebody's got to make a play to make that close loss a close win. And until Dak shows me that he can do that, I can't buy in on the Cowboys.
It's the play calling, brother. It was the play calling. I'm telling you, you saw when they got into the red zone.
I will bag Jason Garrett, the Clapper, with the rest of you. I agree. But I'm not necessarily sold on Mike McCarthy either. I know Aaron Rodgers had him run out of town, and I know he's won a Super Bowl. But I still think when you're underneath Jerry Jones's thumb, it makes it really hard to be a head coach in Dallas. I'm not disagreeing with everything
you ready for this? Ready?
Yeah.
You're hearing it right now. Dallas starts the season, by the time we get the 9th week of the season, I don't know when they're by. Dallas will be a 6-1 team, 6-2 at the worst. At the worst, they're going to come out quickly. They got an easy schedule. I'm telling you, if this team stays healthy, very dangerous. The play calling is what destroyed them. Just look at what happened when they got into the red zone last year. You have Ezekiel Elliott, and he had the 30th. As far as success rate for running backs inside the 10, he was 30th. You have the most dangerous running back in the NFL, and you can't create a play to get him into the end zone when you get to the 10-yard line. You can't figure something out with Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, those wide receivers, that tight end. They've choked in the red zone. That won't happen twice. Go Dallas.
All right, Marco, you make your case for your Philadelphia Eagles pick. Plus 150. My obvious question is here. How do you bet the Eagles with Carson Wentz every single time? I somehow, whether it's fantasy football, whether it's a bet, no matter what it is, I am plagued by this poor kid's injuries. Sounds like he's good. It sounds like he's put on some weight in the offseason, which is also good, which helps give you that extra protection. Tell me why you like the Eagles and the big X factor here, Mr. Wentz.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go with Coach Doug Peterson. We talked about coming into this season, continuity. You want to have systems in place, players in place, coaching staff in place. And the Philadelphia Eagles, Peterson has tenure in this division. Look at all the other teams. They've changed coaches. You've had the Giants in Washington change coaches. You had Dallas change coaches. That can't be ignored to start the season. And I'll agree with VR that Dallas does have an easy start to the season. There's no question about that. But I'm banking on them having some growing pains too, learning McCarthy's system and Jason Garrett being gone. Sorry, I had to say the name there. VR, you know, it makes you cringe. It makes us all cringe. But I like Philadelphia. They find ways to win. They're a scrappy team. On paper, they don't have the talent that Dallas has. They didn't last year. Who won the division? It was Philadelphia. And Carson Wentz, yes, he is a guy that has gotten injured every year. If he stays healthy, he can get this team to the promised land. We saw some big games out of him that first year before the leg injury, and then Nick Foles took the team to the Super Bowl. I like Philadelphia at plus money against Dallas, who always finds a way to screw it up. I'll go ahead and take the plus money with Philadelphia.
I think that's fair. VR, your thoughts on the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, again, I know you're high on the Cowboys, but are you completely writing off this Eagles team, or do you think they actually have a shot to win this division?
No, I think Eagles will be a formidable opponent because I think they'll be able to throw the football with a little more success. Last year, they had tight ends. That was it. I mean, no team threw more to the tight ends than they did because of the injuries. I mean, Zach Ertz, I think, led them in pretty much every receiving stat you could look at. And granted, he's a stud, but he probably still shouldn't be your number one as far as all the stats go. The thing that concerns me, though, is on the defensive side of the ball, losing Malcolm Jenkins, how you replace that. He was on the field for 99% of defensive snaps for the Philadelphia Eagles. And we already know the weakness was the secondary. That, to me, is the biggest concern, how they're going to stop teams from throwing. Because in today's NFL, you got to pass the football. Running back, there's such a small drop-off from your number one to your number two running back. You can't even tell most of the times. Surprising teams still pay so much for some of these guys. But again, in today's NFL, you got to throw the football. And I think that's where Eagles are going to run into problems, not being able to stop teams who could throw. And without being able to stop that in this NFL, I don't think you could win even the NFC East, which is a little more of a physical, at least the perception is a little more of a physical type of division.
I would agree with that. New York Giants plus 1,400. Now, I've got a lot of tweets about this Giants team. Daniel Jones, basically to me, Eli 2.0. I know Giants fans don't want to hear that, but hey, Eli won you a couple of Super Bowls with a really good defense. It's not a knock on Daniel Jones. I'm so used to seeing these athletic quarterbacks, and I think that's where we're starting to see a shift in the league. VR, I'm going to kick it back to you. Giants at 14-1. I actually was shocked to see it that low. I would have put them closer to 20-1 to win this division, just because I think it's a two-dog race here.
Yeah, the Giants, the thing is, if you look at their analytics from last year coming into this season, they're a team that should have won more games. Just based on their points scored, points allowed, if you do just look at those two, they shouldn't have been a 4-win football team. They should have won more. Again, luck plays such a huge factor when it's a small sample size of games like the NFL. That's why I think, sports like NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, where you have 7-game series, the cream tends to rise to the top. You got to go through 2 or 3 playoff series, win 4 of 7 games. Randomness plays less of a factor. So I think the Giants, again, it's hard to be that unlucky, but this defense is just, I don't see how you can make that big of a jump when they were as weak as they were. Only Miami and Carolina was worse, meaning allowing more points. I'm not talking about yardage and nonsense that doesn't matter, because if a team's up by 40, they're not going to gain a lot of yards. They're going to hand the ball off. But if you're down 40, you're probably going to get a lot of yards. Doesn't mean anything. But for this team, points was the problem. And if you can't stop teams from scoring, you're not going to win many football games. So until the Giants do something to really tighten up that defense, I don't think there's no value in them winning this division. Both Philadelphia and Dallas are way too far ahead. They won't be able to even if they get lucky and get past one, they won't be able to piggyback 2 of them. So I don't think that's a bet worth making.
All right. So, not Daniel Jones. Joseph Gomez disagrees with me in the chat. He said, don't be shocked, Kelly. Daniel Jones can run. Marco, your thoughts on the Giants? With these odds, it just doesn't make sense. 14-1 seems too light. And we'll get into the regular season win total as well, but your thoughts on the Giants in this division?
Well, first off, Kelly, let's start. He was a rookie last year, and we saw the rookie mistakes. This team was tied for dead last in turnover differential. Them in the LA Chargers with Phillip Rivers and his noodle arm throwing the interceptions all over the field. You're going to have that with a rookie quarterback when you throw him in there right out of the gate. This is a thing now, this year, you would expect, okay, he had his growing pains. Year 2 should be better. He showed signs of greatness at times. I mean, there were flashes. He had some games, he put up some nice numbers, and he had something to get excited about. But too often, he made the wrong decisions. I think he had 18 turnovers on fumbles last year. And that is a direct result of a horrible offensive line. They did some things in the offseason to help the offensive line. But now you've got a year 2 quarterback. Everything that he learned last year is going to go out the window. Why? Because he's got a new coach and a new offensive coordinator. And, oh, my God, who is that offensive coordinator? Jason Garrett. You just talked about how he couldn't get the Dallas Cowboys in the end zone whenever they were inside the 10-yard line. All right, so now he's the offensive coordinator, and he's going to be handling a young quarterback. I'm not sold on it. This team will be one of those ones that probably will be better later in the season. But again, not having the mini camps, not having the preseason games with a new system and schemes, I think is going to be a detriment to the teams that have everything in place. So I am anti-New York Giants in this one. And yes, the line is too short. It's a New York public team. People want to get excited about him. They like this kid. Hey, you replaced the legend there in New York. Eli, whether you want to have the debate or not, he won you 2 Super Bowls. He didn't put up big numbers, but he put up numbers in the 2 biggest games and got you a win. So deal with that. But Daniel Jones, I still think is a year or 2 away from being a legitimate quarterback in the NFL.
All jokes aside, I'm not kidding when I say that the Superbook does not have odds for the Washington football team to win this division. So we're not purposely skipping over them. We'll talk about them when it comes to regular season win totals. But now we're going to head over to the NFC West. This is the Niners plus everybody else. I think a lot of people are expecting the Niners to get back to the Super Bowl. I don't know if I'm one of those people. VR, you have a play on San Francisco plus 105. I will let you state your case.
Yeah, I went chalk, made it easy. This team's loaded, man. I thought going into last season, we were going to get some value on San Francisco, and they went 13-3 for us. But more importantly, they did well against the spread, and they're a pretty public team. And that, to me, is what's really impressive when you're getting bet and you're still covering numbers. That's why what New Orleans has been able to do with the Brady-Belichick era is just so incredible. That to me is by far the biggest, like in my lifetime of betting sports, that's been the one thing that has defied probability that no one's been able to figure out how they've done it. But getting back to the San Francisco 49ers, let's not forget, this is a team that outscored their opponents by 169 points in their wins. So they didn't beat teams, they crushed teams. And they actually lost 2 of the 8 games at home. If they improve on that, imagine what can happen. Again, I don't think you're going to get a regression from the San Francisco 49ers. They're a top 5 defense year in and year out. I think the offense is going to be improved. If you look at last year, I'm a big fan of what Warren Sharp does. He does a lot of stuff with the NFL that is his own. And to me, I always respect that, when you come up with your own type of analytics or data. And the one thing when you look at this San Francisco team, the talk about Garoppolo is, how he choked when it came to the Super Bowl. But that wasn't the case, man. If you look, going into that fourth quarter, prior to the fourth quarter, he was minutes away from being probably a Super Bowl MVP. After 3 quarters of football in the Super Bowl, Mahomes was 16 of 25, less than 50% completion rate, sacked twice. Jimmy G was 17 of 20 passing, almost 10 yards per passing attempt, 0 sacks. He was playing the perfect game until everything unraveled in a couple of minutes. KC scored, and that was it. That was the end. Because of that, I don't think they're getting the respect they deserve. This team demolished people last year. I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl because the Cowboys are in the way, but I don't think Seattle or the Rams have done enough to bypass them. And Arizona, they're still a few years away from being in that conversation.
Whoa, VR just dropping bombs about the Niners, but I think Mr. Marco D'Angelo is going to go head-to-head with you again here. He has the Seahawks plus 200. So, Marco, I'll let you state your case on the 49ers, and then tell me why you actually have a wager on the Seahawks.
Okay, well, the reason they lost the Super Bowl, and yeah, Jimmy G played well during the game, the first 3 quarters. He was playing downhill. They had the lead. When the 49ers are in the lead, they can run the football. And nobody utilized the running game and tight ends better than the 49ers did last year. Then when the game, as you said, unraveled, it was because he had to make plays. When he was asked to make plays, he couldn't make plays. When you're not running the football down a team's throat, it's a lot easier to defend. It's tougher for the quarterback. Look at the games before that. The Minnesota game. How many passes did they let him throw in that playoff game? Granted, they demolished the Vikings and they really didn't need to, but the game plan going in is Shanahan doesn't have the confidence to let Jimmy G go downfield. And until they do, this team's not going to be an elite team and win on a regular basis. Yes, they won last year. They won the division. But let's not forget, it took the final week of the regular season, and this will be my segue into Seattle, for them to clinch the division. Seattle was driving late and had an opportunity, if they punched it in there, to win the division. In Seattle, if you look at the talent on the rosters, there's no comparison to what the 49ers roster looked like to what the Seattle roster looked like. Seattle had one guy, and that's the key guy, the guy that can make plays, the guy that you want to give the football to when you need to go down the field and score, and that's Russell Wilson. And, we talked about coaches that we have man crushes on and that. I'll give Russell Wilson my man crush. This is a guy that does more with less than any other quarterback in the NFL. And for whatever reason, Pete Carroll keeps the reins on him until the game's on the line. There's no choice. We got to let him loose. And Russell Wilson pulls a game out. Last year, the Seattle Seahawks were decimated with injuries. They were so bad at the end of the season with their running game that they had to basically bring in Marshawn Lynch, bring him in with an ambulance from the rest home out of retirement to play running back those last few games. And this is a team that still made the playoffs and still won a playoff game and then lost in the second round. I'm in on the Seahawks. You've got a good coach. You've got a great quarterback. And if this team shores up some of those holes they had, and let's not forget, last year was a rebuilding year for their defense, and their defense played well. It should be even better this year. And without the injuries to running backs, it'll make the offense that much better. And memo to Pete Carroll, please let Russell Wilson play a little bit more downfield. I know he loves to play the controlled game, and that's why Seattle, year in and year out, if you look at turnover differential, they're always going to be in the upper half of the turnover differential because they don't take chances and they play clean games. But sometimes you got to just take your foot off the gas, or put your foot on the gas, I should say, and let Russell Wilson play.
I would agree with that, Marco. VR, your thoughts on what Marco said about the Seahawks, how you have the Seahawks rated for this season, and do you think, I know you mentioned, you're like, I know I took the chalk. This 49ers team was a freight train, and I agree. I stepped in front of them on multiple occasions, asking myself, WTF by halftime. It was so infuriating. I know the Chiefs fans in the comment section want to say, has Kelly bet against the Chiefs yet? You guys got to wait till next week for us to do the AFC, but it's true. This was kind of my Chiefs team of the NFC. I kept saying, you know what? They're overvalued here. They're overvalued here. And sure enough, it didn't matter. Cliff Kingsbury, a couple questionable calls during that game. No comment there. I haven't gotten over that one just yet. But in all seriousness, your thoughts on the Seattle Seahawks plus $2 here. And then I'll let you kick it over to the Rams. They're currently plus 700 at the Westgate here in Vegas.
Here's the thing that you got to look at with Seattle. They're getting lucky this year because they have a very simple schedule, one of the easier schedules. They play the 27th ranked pass defenses, 28th ranked pass offenses, 26th ranked rushing offenses. So their schedule is very easy. But this team, to me, they're phony. Even if they end up winning some football games because of that easy schedule, I just don't think they're as good as they're projected to be. Last year, they were very healthy. One of the most, in fact, top 5, I believe, in as far as health goes, not having to deal with injuries all year. That was huge. Number 2, they got very lucky. They were able to defy probability, something you cannot do. Let me tell you about the Seattle Seahawks last year. They were behind in 10 of their 12 games. They went 10-2 in games that they were losing. Okay? Considering the fact that a team, when losing, when they're behind, loses that game close to 65 out of 100 times, Seattle flipped that around. They actually won those games almost 85% of the time. So here's a team that was behind. You're playing 12 games from behind. You're supposed to go maybe 4-8. If you're lucky, they go 10-2. Again, that's the product of good luck, and that's what happens when an outcome's decided in 60 minutes. There's going to be a ton of randomness. So for me, I just don't see what is under the hood for Seattle, meaning when I dig deep, it looks like another $3 bill in the making, that if they come in with a 10-6 or an 11-5, get to the playoffs, run into a real team, they're going to get slapped around. I don't think they're legit. I don't think they're able to stay as healthy as last year. The only thing they got going for them is the schedule and the fact that Pete Carroll plays like it's college football and leaves his starters in even up 40. But that's another podcast.
That is, you're absolutely
knows how
right.
I feel about Seattle. Knows how I feel about Seattle.
Pete kills me. He does that to me when every opportunity I have for a backdoor cover. That is exactly what happens.
Yeah, he's like, let me kick that field goal. I'm only up 28. They may score 4 touchdowns. Let me make it 4 touchdowns and a field goal.
Every single time, I end up on the losing end of that one. The Los Angeles Rams, boy, how the mighty have fallen. Just in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, now just 7-1 to win the NFC West. Jared Goff, as a quarterback, no Todd Gurley. Now they're going to have to figure out how to excel in this division where all of a sudden the Cardinals are nipping at their heels with 8-1. VR, I'm going to get your opinion real quick on the Rams, and then I'll kick it over to Marco.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's getting more difficult for them because the division's not getting any easier. And now you have coaches with a lot more game film of this Los Angeles Rams team. When we first saw the new and improved Rams, it's a novelty. It takes a while. We talk about it year in and year out. A lot of times you see it with new quarterbacks, new offensive schemes. I mean, the Wildcat worked for a while until it didn't. Not saying that's what, the Rams and McVay, but still, I think that was the undoing of this team. Started believing their own press, started believing their own hype. And the NFL is one of those copycat leagues where they catch up very quickly. In fact, that's their job. Scout other teams, see what they're doing right, steal what you can from them, and implement it onto your football team. And for the Rams, that was the undoing. Again, haven't seen enough in the offseason to see how they're really going to change what happened last year. They were 9-7. They should have been 9-7. I mean, they were plus 30 points in differential. Turnovers, they were at 0. They're a mediocre team. Again, probably won a game or 2 more than they even should have. But for me, not a team I'm that high on because of the fact I'm high on San Francisco. Seattle has an easy schedule, and the Rams have been figured out, which was proven to us last year.
All right, Marco, I mentioned the Rams and the Cardinals kind of neck and neck, and I know you guys touched on the Cardinals a little bit earlier. Cliff Kingsbury did show some promise. I do think that team will be better, but I want to hear your thoughts on the Los Angeles Rams at 7-1. Then we'll segue to the Cardinals at 8-1.
Well, I think Ace made a very good point about Sean McVay. When he came into the league, this will be his 4th year with the Rams. He was the flavor of the week. You know, what he was doing, what the Rams were doing offensively, nobody had an answer for it. Well, after year 1, then year 2, you've got film to look at, you make adjustments, and then last year they really regressed in year 3. Part of it was the offensive line play of the Rams. The Rams' offensive line was bad last year. They had a lot of injuries, guys shifting positions, and it took its toll. Jared Goff is a good quarterback, but not a great quarterback. When he's pressured, he's a mediocre quarterback. And last year, he was pressured too often. And we talked about Todd Gurley. He's gone now, but Todd Gurley wasn't productive last year. Was it the offensive line? Was it the knee? We don't know for sure, or a combination of both. But what I do know is when they don't have that running game working, I've said it 100 times, a good running game makes an average quarterback good, and it makes a good quarterback great. They didn't have that luxury last year, and too many times they were in bad down and distance situations, and Jared Goff just didn't make the plays that he was making in that first year. This is a team that's an X factor. They've addressed the offensive line with some help. Should be better this year. What are they going to get from the running game without Todd Gurley? That's yet to be seen. And can Jared Goff get us back to the quarterback we saw in the Super Bowl? Now, he didn't have a good game in the Super Bowl, but he had a good season getting there. Or are we going to see the Jared Goff we saw last year? This is the biggest X factor to me of all the teams we've talked about today, because this team has the potential to jump all the way up and compete for the division, or they can continue to head the other direction.
Right there. Why didn't you make a play at 7-1? Do you think the value is not there? Or you think it's too much of a risk? If you think that they have the potential to make that leap, why isn't it worth a wager?
To me, I'm not a Jared Goff fan. If it comes down to one thing, I don't think he's a quarterback, just like what I, badmouth San Francisco with Jimmy Garoppolo. I just don't think he's a guy that you can put a team on your shoulders and win. And in this league, you've got to do that. You need to have the playmakers. And as much as, VR likes Dallas, and I can't argue with the talent of Dallas, until Dak shows me that, I can't pull the trigger there. And I put Jared Goff in that same spot.
All right. Kyler Murray, the Arizona Cardinals, Cliff Kingsbury. VR had kind of alluded that he thought they were just a little bit away, but I'll let you speak on them first. Tell me your thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals. Do they have an outside shot to win this division?
No, they don't. This is a team that showed signs last year, and it's got everybody excited. The offense put up points. Kyler Murray had a rookie season that nobody expected him to have. And remember, this is a guy till late in his college, his last college season there at Oklahoma, wasn't even going to play football. He was going to the Oakland A's. This is, a surprise to me in somewhat. But again, we talked about Kingsbury's offense. It's not something that you saw all the time in the NFL. So it was a situation where it's new, it's quirky, and teams didn't know how to adjust to it. Now they've had an off season to look at all those game films, look at all those tendencies, and I think Kyler Murray, the natural knee-jerk reaction is, hey, he's going to build on last year and have a better year. I think you're going to see a little bit of a regression because teams are going to be better prepared. Now, what I do like about Arizona, they went out and got him a playmaker at wide receiver. DeAndre Hopkins they stole him from Houston. And this is going to make, although he's at the, backside of his career, I'm a big Larry Fitzgerald fan. Now that you have Hopkins lining up on the other side, Larry Fitzgerald is going to have a good season because he's not going to get the double teams anymore. It's going to go to Hopkins. And Larry Fitzgerald is a guy that'll run the routes over the middle. He'll do the precise routes, get hit, move the chains. That's going to help Arizona. They still need help on defense. Their defense gave up too many points last year. So with that said, they might be a couple years away, but I'm not going to jump on the Arizona bandwagon just yet.
All right, VR, you get the last word before we go to break. Arizona Cardinals at 8-1. Do you agree with Marco? Do you disagree with Marco? Tell me your thoughts on Cliff Kingsbury's squad.
I can tell you some sharp money bet that there'll be an improvement with Arizona. They bet them over 7. That's why we're looking at 7.5 now. I didn't personally get down on that myself. But I like this Arizona team. I do. I don't think they're capable, obviously, of winning this division just yet. As I touched on, I think they're a few years away. But they're making the right moves if you see what they're doing. I love the fact they got rid of Johnson. That was just a headache. Over the last 2 seasons, he averaged 3.6 yards per carry. And you're giving them what, $20 million? I mean, they were able to go out there and get some players. Marco touched on DeAndre Hopkins. That's huge. But I don't think, because of his stature, meaning he's smaller, he's not a big physical specimen, Kyler Murray hasn't gotten the notoriety, I think, the respect he deserves. What he was able to do last year was amazing for a rookie quarterback. Only 2 other quarterbacks in the history of the NFL as rookies had been able to put up those kind of numbers. And neither of those 2 guys rushed for what he did. I think they're going to have even more success using him as a dual threat. I love what Sports Info Solutions ran this study. And what they found was that, believe it or not, that quarterbacks get hurt the least when they run on a scripted play. So when the coach calls a quarterback run, they get injured the least during those plays. They get hurt the most when they're scrambling, when they get blindsided, when the play breaks down and they're looking to make extra yards. That's where they get hurt. But when they're designed plays, quarterbacks have been able to stay healthy. And I think that's where we're overlooking how Murray could be one of those players that runs the ball as a quarterback and stays healthy. Because I do think they have the coaching staff to implement that style. I think that's what they're going to do. And they're not going to get him killed out there, which is the fear when you have a dual threat quarterback in 2020 NFL. These guys are big, physical, strong, fast. And for quarterbacks, they get hurt, the season's over. So that's always the fear when you bet a team on a future that has a quarterback that has to stay healthy and is going to run the football. But again, I think they're going to focus on using him that way. I like what I see from Arizona, man. It's a team that didn't get lucky last year. They were 3-5 in 1-score games. Again, will they go over season win totals and be an 8-8 team? Maybe. I didn't bet it, but I can't disagree with some sharp guys that did.
All right, guys. Appreciate you guys tuning in for the extended version of Bet On It. John Murray is going to kill me. I was supposed to start the podcast 3 minutes ago. We're going to go to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're doing regular season win totals. We're talking Super Bowl. We got to fly through this before I lose my job. Again, appreciate you guys tuning in. Quick commercial break.
Get $25 in wager bucks added to your account after your first purchase at wagertalk.com and sportsmemo.com. This is just our way of saying thank you for joining the Wager Talk and Sports Memo family.
Football is here, and the Gold Sheet, the nation's oldest sports betting newsletter, is back for its 63rd year, bigger and better than ever. Gold Sheet has a new, improved web-based, mobile-friendly format that includes all of the winning information you rely on with the easiest access ever. While the format is new, all of the features you are accustomed to are still there. That's right. Analysis on every pro and college game, key release selections, updated power ratings on every team, point spread logs for all NFL and college teams, and all college football games through May 2021 will be included. To celebrate joining the Wager Talk family, we are offering our subscribers our best deal ever. Sign up for a season of any Gold Sheet product and get $200 in Wager Bucks as a bonus. Wager Bucks can be used to purchase handicapping information from any of our 40-plus experts on Wager Talk or sportsmemo.com. Head to goldsheet.com/WagerTalk for any subscription and bonus details. Appreciate you guys sticking with us here. I know this is a longer bet on it than usual, but we've got so much information. I don't want to cut any of these guys short. Next week, we'll kind of blend it a little bit together for the AFC show. One of the things before we get into regular season win totals is I text John Murray over at the Westgate because I wanted clarification. You guys were asking in the chat. Said, John, can you send me your rules on NFL regular season win totals, divisional odds, conference bets, whatever it means? I go, I need to know, do all 16 games have to be played for action? He said yes, as well as the playoff yes, no options, which we're going to go through here in a minute. So I just wanted to get some clarification for you guys. I kind of had the idea. I just wanted to make sure it was legit. So we've already touched on all of these teams in the division. So we're going to kind of go a little rapid fire with, do you guys like their season win total over? And do you like yes or no for this team to make the playoffs? This is going to be a fun one. I love regular season win totals. Why? Because we can find overreactions. We spoke on this, for example, the Bears last year, the Browns last year. Lots of teams get a lot of hype in the media, and I'm curious to see what our experts have to say about these teams. We're going to start off with the NFC North. VR, I'm going to go to you first. The Vikings season win at the Westgate, 9 minus 110. Yes, minus 155 to make the playoffs. Give me 30 seconds of your thoughts, and then we'll kick it to Marco.
Yes, I'd lay the minus 155 because I do think they win the division as I bet. So because of that, they're going to make the playoffs. And season win totals, I think they could improve off of last year. They went 2-4 in the division. That should change.
All right, Marco, your thoughts. You mentioned Coach Zimmer early on. We know I love this man, but is he going to win 9 games, and is he going to make the playoffs?
Well, he's going to win the division, so that's going to get him into the playoffs. So I am with the Vikings for the division. I am with the Vikings for yes on the playoffs. The season win total, 10 wins is where I have them at. So on the current number, we definitely would be taking the over, but I think the better bet is the division and the yes on the playoffs for them. But if you ask me, where am I going? Yes or no? Some of these will be leans. Yes, I'll go over on the season win total.
No problem with leans. Just clarify whether you actually made a play or not for either one of you guys. I did not bet the Vikings season win total. I actually have this team winning 9 games, so it would be a push for me. Marco, I'm going to kick it back to you. Packers under 9, minus 135 currently at Superbook USA, but yes, minus 130 to make the playoffs. Your thoughts on the Packers season win total?
Yeah, season win total, as we alluded to earlier, 13 wins last year, and Vegas puts it at 9 this year. That might be too much of an adjustment. I am going to lean to the under, but I would have rather had it at 9.5. We don't have that. So 9 is probably where they land. And do they make the playoffs? I'm going to go with the no on the playoffs.
Marco, you're absolutely right. This one's moved a ton. VR and I talked about this one over a month ago when he said, Kelly, I like the under on this Packers team. He laid under 9, minus 130. I think my number is about the same. VR, you want to touch on this Packers team and whether or not you think they'll make the playoffs?
Yeah, this is a premium bet for me. I was looking to bet against Green Bay pretty much regardless of what number they put up there. I wanted to see a regression. I thought 9 was fair. I laid minus 130 like you touched on to go under that, and I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think once the season starts to go bad, it's going to go really bad.
All right, I'm going to stick with you. The Bears 8, under minus 130. Yes, plus 175 to make the playoffs. I know you and Marco are conflicting here. Give me your reasoning on the under, and you got a really good number, 8.5 minus 175.
Yeah, I had to pay some chalk to get that 8.5, but I thought it was worth it. Again, I don't think this is a 9-win team. I don't like the Foles. I think long-term it's good. Short-term, it's not. And this year's the short term's coming up ahead. So I think under, obviously I bet it, and I don't think they make the playoffs either.
All right, Marco, you bet the over 8 wins. I'll let you touch on that. Do you think it's worth a sprinkle here, plus 175 for the Bears to make the playoffs?
Yes, I do. If I'm betting the over with them, I think that they're going to be the second best team in the NFC North. And I go back to what I said earlier. This is a team that had 0 offensive production last year from Trubisky, and they were an 8-8 team. They've got one of the best defenses in football. If Trubisky has any improvement, they go over. If Trubisky gets yanked and they go to Foles, that's an improvement. They go over. I'm in on the Bears.
All right, let's talk about the Lions. Marco, I'm going to stick with you. Gianni, Detroit, all capital letters, Lions under. I don't know if I want to bet this Lions under. It is now 7 plus 110. If you want to bet the over, it's minus 130 at Superbook USA. They're plus 270 to make the playoffs. I know there's a lot of hype surrounding this team, but you mentioned earlier, is this too much of a jump for this Lions team?
Yeah, it's no on the playoffs. And at 7, I'll go under. There were 6.5s floating around and then 7s. At 7, I think the worst you could do is get a push here. I do not see the Lions as an 8-8 team. So if you get 7, take the under.
VR, I know you sent me this one weeks ago, over 6.5 minus 140. We've now seen it move up half a game plus some juice. Your thoughts on this Lions team? What do you see with them, and why you think they're going to go over their season win total? And do they have an outside shot of making the playoffs?
You know, they do if they go on a run. They really do. I bet the over, like you said, on season win totals, as I do expect them to even double what they were able to do last year. Because of the fact, I think Chicago will have a down year. I think Green Bay is going to have a down year, and that should help a team that went 0-6 in their division. I don't think that's going to be the case this time around, and I think they'll be better than that 2-6 home record. So for me, I went over on Detroit. I didn't bet they'd make the playoffs, but that's one of those long shots I can't fault anyone for making.
VR, Eric Simmons wants to know, is Matthew Stafford a Hall of Famer?
No.
I think it's tough. I don't think he can get there with all of his injuries. Yeah. I feel confident with him this season. I think he's just
going to have to make a run in his life. You got to make some kind of run. You got to make a playoff. You got to win something. Too much time injured. Too much time injured.
You know where he is a Hall of Famer? For fantasy football league coaches, owners. For sure. He has been really great. He is always my second choice to have as a backup quarterback, and he will sometimes really surprise you. Okay, let's move to the NFC South. We touched on the Saints earlier. Their season win total is 10, under minus 120. Yes, minus 330 to make the playoffs. I'm going to stick with you, VR. This is a Saints team. You can touch on their home field advantage I asked Marco about earlier. 10 wins is a lot in this division, in my opinion. I mentioned I thought they could lose at the Panthers. I thought they could lose at the Bucks. Heck, I even think they could lose at Atlanta. This is not some team that I'm wanting to go over 10 wins with.
You're so right, Kelly. And one of the groups I bet with actually bet me under 10 season win Saints. And me having a little bit of soft spot for them, didn't piggyback it or use it. I'll admit it, because I'm a little afraid of this Saints team. But as I touched on, that plus 15 turnover differential, only New England did better. I think the regression is going to come because it happened with fumbles, not interceptions. I'll keep stressing that point. I hate to say it, I'd go under 10, and playoffs, I think they're not. If they go under 10, then they're not going to make the playoffs, right? Probably. So
I would agree with that.
You see, I'm conflicted. I'm conflicted with the Saints. I'm conflicted.
It's okay. I appreciate it. Marco, the Saints minus 330 to make the playoffs. I'm with VR here. If they don't win 10 games, their chances of making the playoffs are not as good. Laying $3 is not something I ever like to do anyway, but your thoughts on the Saints season win total and yes, no to make the playoffs?
No value on the yes, no, because they are still on paper the team to win that division. And, you know, all you got to do is win the division. You're automatically in the playoffs, obviously. But the season win total, I do think that there is value there. And I would play, it's not one of my official plays, but I would go under on the season win total.
All right, I'm going to keep with you. You were very high on the Falcons earlier. You said outside shot 10-1 to win their division. Then that means you have to like this team plus 240 to go to the playoffs. Falcons 7.5 wins, a little juice to the under minus 120.
Yeah, I'm taking them over for the season win totals. I'm taking a flyer on them to win the division. And then obviously, if I'm making those two plays, I got to get the plus money on making the playoffs as well. So yeah, as VR said, he was all in on Dallas. I'm not all in to win the Super Bowl with Atlanta, but I think there's money to be made with them in the division and in season win totals, and they can sneak into the playoffs.
VR, my note here for you, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers up next, $3 bill. We got to get Joe, our producer, in here. Drop it. We're going to get some graphics and stuff going for the regular Bet On It show. I'm going to get him a $3 bill graphic just because. Your thoughts here. Tampa Bay 9.5 minus 120. Yes, minus $2 to make the playoffs. I know it's been a long time since Tom Brady hasn't made the playoffs. And those were years that he probably would like to forget. That being said, tell me your thoughts on the Bucs regular season win total.
You know, again, they're going to be that overvalued team, and I think they're going to be that sentimental favorite where you're going to get bettors to bet them to win, to get to the playoffs. I don't think so. Again, I think the Saints are going to be too difficult in that division. I don't think Tampa makes the playoffs. I say no, and season win total under.
Ooh, all right, I'm going to stick with you. Panthers, we talked about this Teddy Bridgewater, Christian McCaffrey team. 5.5 wins over minus 130. I maybe am too high on this team. And again, like Marco said, he loves Matt Rule. Who didn't love Matt Rule as a college coach if you were betting on his teams? Yes, to make the playoffs plus 450 is not as juicy as the 30-1 to win the division. VR, your thoughts on the Panthers?
Yeah, no, they're not making the playoffs, but it's going to cost you too much to place that bet. Yeah, I don't see this team making the playoffs at all. Hey, listen, they got outscored by 130 points over last season. That's a lot to improve on. That's a lot to overcome. So I just don't see the type of improvement to get them to the playoffs. Could they win one more game than last year? Maybe, but I wouldn't bet on it. Again, minus 130 point differential. I got to see it before I believe it.
I got to laugh. I was just waiting for somebody to comment on this fake background of mine over here with the cactus, and it's jumping into the comment section now. No, Kevin, this is a green screen so that we can shoot this episode from home. Again, this was just kind of our first episode. We wanted to get this information to you guys prior to week one, trying out a new format. We're going to see how it works. If you guys are loving the show right now, drop it in the comments section. Make me feel good about this home setup. Marco, I'm going to let you finish here before we go to commercial break. Your thoughts on the Panthers over 5.5 minus 135, and if they are worth a shot to make the playoffs plus 450.
Yeah, Kelly, before I say Carolina, you forgot to ask me about Tampa Bay, which I actually do have an actual bet on.
That was my fault. You are right. It wouldn't be bet on it if I didn't forget to ask you something, Marco. It happens every single show with this back and forth format. Talk to me about the Panthers, and I'll let you circle back and finish with Tampa Bay before we go to a commercial break.
No problem. With Carolina, obviously it's a no for the playoffs, but the juice is way too high. As far as the over-under goes, I'm a big Matt Rule fan, and I think this team is going to steal a couple games later in the season. And you look at this team from last year, they had 5 wins. They only got to pick up one more win to get over the season win total. And you're giving me Teddy Bridgewater over Kyle Allen, and you're giving me Matt Rule over Ron Rivera, who I think his time had passed, yeah, I'll go over on Carolina. And then doubling back to Tampa, we hit it hard when we talked about them earlier. Under and no for the prop. Take under season win totals and no for the playoffs on Tampa Bay.
All right, Joe, cut to commercial. When we get back, we'll finish up these NFC season win totals and get the boys' thoughts on the Super Bowl.
Don't miss a single winning play from your favorite wagertalk.com or sportsmemo.com handicapper when you buy a 7-day all-access package for $119. You'll get every play, including 5% plays that normally sell for $40.
Football is here, and the Gold Sheet, the nation's oldest sports betting newsletter, is back for its 63rd year, bigger and better than ever. Gold Sheet has a new, improved web-based, mobile-friendly format that includes all of the winning information you rely on with the easiest access ever. While the format is new, all of the features you are accustomed to are still there. That's right, analysis on every pro and college game, key release selections, updated power ratings on every team, point spread logs for all NFL and college teams, and all college football games through May 2021 will be included. To celebrate joining the Wager Talk family, we are offering our subscribers our best deal ever. Sign up for a season of any Gold Sheet product and get $200 in wager bucks as a bonus. Wager bucks can be used to purchase handicapping information from any of our 40-plus experts on Wager Talk or sportsmemo.com. Head to goldsheet.com/wagertalk for any subscription and bonus details. All right, guys, we love our friends over at the Gold Sheet. For those of you that don't know, I'm a busy woman. I think I've said that enough times. The Gold Sheet has been so helpful for me over the years to kind of give you a cheat sheet to help you along with your handicapping. They put up their own power ratings. It's absolutely awesome to be able to compare to your own. For those of you that work your asses off like me and don't have time to always do the work yourself, the Gold Sheet is absolutely awesome. Let's head over to the NFC East. I'm now 21 minutes late to my podcast for you guys keeping track at home. Over under how many angry texts from John Murray. This one's going to be fun. Make sure you guys check out the Kelly and Murray show if you need a good laugh. Cowboys, VR's team to win it all this year. VR, I'm going to start with you. Season win total 10. Yes, minus 260 to make the playoffs. VR, I know you bet this one early. Over 9, minus 160. Talk to me about the boys' regular season win total.
You could go over 10 and you'll cash that ticket well before. What will they be at by Thanksgiving? So they'll be, I don't know how many weeks that is, but rest assured, Dallas will be a 10-2 team. You won't have to wait much longer than that. Yeah, Dallas over season wins, easy money. Dallas to make the playoffs, yes, easy money. And Dallas to win that division, again, easy money. You got a trifecta right there. Call your book, don't wait. Line won't be there forever.
There we go. Marco, your thoughts on the Dallas Cowboys regular season win total?
Well, the season win total of 10, I will go ahead and go with the over there. To lose that bet, they got to get to 9. And if Dallas doesn't win 9 with their schedule this year, they've got a big problem, and Dak can forget about a big contract. For me, as far as the playoffs go, I'm not going to go ahead and do the juice on that one. It's a little bit too much for me. I'm not going to bet the no, but I don't want to bet the yes at that price.
I think that's fair, but let's kick it over to your Eagles team that you think will win that division. Eagles under 9.5, minus 120 with our friends over at the Superbook. Yes, minus 185 to make the playoffs.
Well, obviously, if I have them winning the division, I have them making the playoffs. I do like them to win the division at plus money, so that is a bet that I did make. I will go with the playoffs, and for the season win total at 9.5, yes, I'm going over the total for them. I see this team at worst as a 10-win team, more like maybe 11-5 if they don't have injuries.
All right, Marco, I'm going to stick with you here. Giants 6.5 under, minus 140. Yes, plus 375 to make the playoffs. Your thoughts? I have this Giants team winning 7 games. A half a game isn't something I'm in love with making a wager here. Do you think this team can win 7 games?
With the new coaching staff, I can't go that route. I just think there's going to be too many growing pains early in the season. And you know how things can snowball. If you get off to that slow start, you can lose a team early on. So it's a no for me on the playoffs, obviously. The 6.5, I think, is probably priced right. They're between a 6 and 7 win team at best. If you forced me to wager, I would take the under, but I'm not going to go that route.
All right, VR, your thoughts on the New York Football Giants? Do they have an outside shot to make the playoffs?
No, they're not making the playoffs, so save that money. As far as season win totals, I got to agree with Marco. I haven't touched it. If I had to bet it, I'd go under. I think they're going to be better, but are they going to be, 3 games better? I don't think so. Under or leave it alone.
All right. And the team we didn't get a touch on because the Westgate did not have any odds on them to win the NFC East. NFC East, the Washington football team over under, I call them the Redskins, 144 times this football season, over 5 wins minus 130. Yes, plus 700 to win the playoffs, to make the playoffs. Sorry, VR, that's a question for you.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Marco. Washington was just so awful last year. Can you be that bad again? It's almost impossible. But if anyone could do it, it's probably the team that doesn't even have a name yet. So this is just a steer clear team for me. I wouldn't invest on them to make the playoffs. There's no chance of that. But season wins, I wouldn't mess with that either. Honestly, I think you may find value betting this team during the season because they are such a stay away. But as far as futures, not the kind of team you want to invest in at all.
Marco, this is Ron Rivera. I thought he was a great coach in Carolina. Yeah. Why? Because he loved to gamble. And he would take some of those outside shots. And I felt like he wasn't as ballsy as Coach Zimmer, but he had moments. And so I'm kind of looking at this team going, is there too much drama surrounding them? Obviously, we just know that Ron Rivera was diagnosed with cancer. Could that possibly cause him to not be able to coach on the sidelines during this year? There's a lot of question marks with this team. Your thoughts on the Washington football team over season win total?
Yeah, this is a team that I'm not going to get involved in on any of the future bets. I will look to find spots where there'll be value because they will be really undervalued by the odds makers in public. One thing I will say about this team, I think you're going to see a drastic improvement on the defensive side of the football. And Washington for a long time has been horrible on the defensive side. With the draft pick of Chase Young, this is a guy that is a game changer and is going to make this team a force. And whenever you can put pressure on quarterbacks, you can get sacks, you can get strips, you can get fumbles, scoop and scores. They're going to surprise some teams with that defense. And I think that's going to be the part of this team that excels first. I'm not a fan of Haskins. Didn't impress me last year. He's got a long way to go this year. We'll see what happens. New coaching staff, again, growing pains. Let's see what happens as the season unfolds.
All right, as we wrap up regular season win totals, we're going to finish off with the NFC West. Marco, I'm going to stay with you. The 49ers under 10.5 minus 130 at the Superbook. Yes, minus 330 to make the playoffs.
All right, because I'm not a Jimmy G fan, I'm not going to take that big price to make the playoffs. On paper, yes, they're supposed to make the playoffs. They were a Super Bowl team last year. We've also throw out there, remember, the Super Bowl losers, the hangover effect. If you want to take a price, take a stab, this is when you're supposed to do it because these teams generally regress. What did we see last year with the Rams? So that's something to put in there. And maybe I just thought
we've seen it with the Seahawks. We've seen it with multiple teams throughout the years. Now, the exception to that would be the New England Patriots.
They're the exception to everything, okay? Every rule or every stat that you have, there's an asterisk with the Belichick and Patriots. But you know what? Just saying it out loud, I talked myself into taking a price. Go ahead and take a shot on the price with the no on the 49ers. It's a big number.
It is a big number. VR, do you agree with Marco here? I know you're a little bit higher on the 49ers than he is.
I think they would have to suffer a lot of key injuries to not make the playoffs. Like a lot of things would have to go bad because of how loaded this team is. And I agree with you guys 100%. The Super Bowl hangover is true for that team that loses. The one thing I'd add, though, with San Francisco is they have a young coach, and this is a team on the up, meaning they're not a veteran team that finally got there, didn't get it done, and now it's like we did all that for nothing. They're a team, I think, that still thinks there's more doors to get through. So for that, I think they're still motivated. I wouldn't bet against them. I like the season win total over.
All right, I'm going to stick with you, VR. Let's kick it to the Seahawks, minus 110. Yes to make the playoffs, minus 150.
I would take the plus money with the no. Again, I thought a lot of things went right for them. This team went 11-5. And you know how many points they scored more than their opponents in those 16 games? 7. So they scored less than half a point more per game than their opponent. And they ended up 11-5. That's pretty lucky. If they could do that back to back to back, then, you know, Pete Carroll, start playing the lottery. But no, I say no, get the plus money, bet that season win total under. I think the wheels are coming off.
I love when you guys are head-to-head. Marco feels the opposite of you. He actually has a ticket on the Seahawks to win their division. Marco, that means you have to like the over and yes to make the playoffs, correct?
Correct. All the way. I'm all in on Seattle. And all I'm going to say with that point differential, they're efficient. They just do what they need to do to get it done.
Yeah, they get it done. Whether by an inch or a mile, baby. You're right. You're right.
However, Marco needs to swing it in his favor. He's going to do it. I love it. Rams under 8.5. Marco minus 140. Yes, plus 160 to make the playoffs.
I'm not sold on the Rams. We need to see Jared Goff go back to what we saw 2 years ago. And until he shows me that, I'm not a fan of the Rams. And as we said, I think they caught up to Sean McVay with his system. I'm no across the board.
VR, do you agree with Marco on his analysis of the Rams season win total?
100%. We know that McVay and the Rams could game plan, but can they switch it up during the game if it's not going right? I haven't seen that yet. So no, I agree with Marco 100%. Go no there and under if you're going to bet it.
VR, in an earlier segment, you mentioned sharp money was on the over 7.5 for the Cardinals. Do you feel like the Cardinals are worth a play there? Yes, plus 210 to make the playoffs.
No, I'll be honest with you. Because I disagreed with Sharps here. I like what I saw with Kyler Murray, like I touched on. I'm real high on him. And I think this team's a couple seasons away because they did the right thing by dumping that big Johnson contract. It's going to free up a lot of cap space. And because of that, I think the future looks bright, but just not yet. And I think asking them to do it this year is asking a lot. So I disagree with the wise guys that went over that 7, now 7.5. I didn't touch it myself. I passed. Hopefully they get there for those guys, but I left it alone. I don't like it.
All right, Marco, I'll let you have the last word here on the NFC West. Your thoughts on the Cardinals' regular season win total, and do they have an outside shot to make the playoffs?
No on the playoffs. In the 7.5, I'm going under. This is one of the plays that I actually made. For this team to lose this bet, it has to get to 500. I do not see that in year 2. We've got film on this offense now. Teams will be better prepared for Arizona. I do like the additions they made with DeAndre Hopkins, but still I see a slight regression in year 2. I'm going to go ahead and take the under on the season win total.
All right, guys, I appreciate you guys hanging in for the 2-hour-plus edition episode of Bet On It. Marco's butt is sore. I got to get him a new seat cushion like I've been sitting on. We're going to come back. We're going to talk NFC Championship odds. We're going to talk Super Bowl. But first, we got to take a quick commercial break.
Get $25 in wager bucks added to your account after your first purchase at wagertalk.com and sportsmemo.com. This is just our way of saying thank you for joining the Wager Talk and Sports Memo family.
Football is here, and the Gold Sheet, the nation's oldest sports betting newsletter, is back for its 63rd year, bigger and better than ever. Gold Sheet has a new, improved web-based, mobile-friendly format that includes all of the winning information you rely on with the easiest access ever. While the format is new, all of the features you're accustomed to are still there. That's right, analysis on every pro and college game, key release selections, updated power ratings on every team, point spread logs for all NFL and college teams, and all college football games through May 2021 will be included. To celebrate joining the Wager Talk family, we are offering our subscribers our best deal ever. Sign up for a season of any Gold Sheet product and get $200 in wager bucks as a bonus. Wager bucks can be used to purchase handicapping information from any of our 40-plus experts on Wager Talk or sportsmemo.com. Head to goldsheet.com/wagertalk for any subscription and bonus details. If you guys are not sick of the Gold Sheet commercials just yet, I apologize. I got to get with Joe next week so we can get these commercials sorted out. Long story short, we're coming to the end of our show today. We are going to talk about the NFC. We are going to talk about the Super Bowl. VR, I'm going to let you have the floor first because you have already professed your love to the Dallas Cowboys. You believe they will represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Talk to me about their odds at 12-1 to win the whole shebang.
And it's going to keep dropping. You know, when this season kicks off, you'll be lucky to get 10-1 on the Dallas Cowboys because word starts to spread. You start to see the talent. I'm telling you now, this team's extremely loaded. But rather than talk stats, data, all that stuff, what really matters, and this is the bottom line, it's the truth, we're going to need to get lucky because you need to stay healthy. You need randomness not to cost you that game in the playoffs like it did with the Saints on a blown call that stopped them from getting to the Super Bowl. We all remember that happening. So you do need some good luck. But on the flip side, you're getting a good return as well, upwards of 10-1 on a team that should be there from start to finish. And more importantly, you should be in the driver's seat, meaning halfway through the season, this price will not be there. They have a very easy first half of the season schedule. So they could come out of the gate 5-0, 7-1, 8-2. You're never going to get those odds again. So for me, lock it in now if you agree with me. I don't think you'll get a better price on the Cowboys. You already know how loaded they are. If you don't, you're going to find out over the next couple weeks as we go into the season and all the preview shows come out. This team's stocked and ready to go.
All right, Marco, last but not least, your thoughts on who represents the NFC in the Super Bowl. Now, I know our good friend Teddy Covers says there's no value on betting a team to win the Super Bowl, but VR says he doesn't believe that nonsense. He's got to have a ticket in his pocket. He's got to have something to root for.
Yep.
I kind of like that idea. The only qualm is I have to wait till February to cash a ticket. I'd rather bet teams week in and week out. Give me your philosophy on betting teams to win the Super Bowl and who you think is going to be there this year.
Well, a lot of people love betting the Super Bowl, and there's some well-known handicappers around town that buys tickets on all of the teams, and then when that team makes the Super Bowl, he tweets them out. How does he do it? I don't know. But anyways, getting back to my pick, I'm going with the Seattle Seahawks. That's the team I'm riding. I'm all in. Russell Wilson, and this is a spot for them. Again, all the injuries they had last year, all of the turnover on defense, and this is a team that was one game away from winning their division and was in their playoff game that second round, could have won that game, lost it, won the first round game. I'm looking for the Seattle Seahawks to make that next step.
Seahawks also 12-1 to win the whole thing. I was going to kick it to one more commercial, but because we did this one so fast, and John Murray is going to kill me if I do not call him here in the next 5 minutes to do the Kelly and Murray show. Joe, can you do me a favor? Put up both guys' recaps so that our viewers can see what they played, what they leaned on, and who they have to win the Super Bowl. Marco, Philly to win the NFC East, Minnesota to win the NFC North, Atlanta 10-1. I like the long shot there to win the NFC South. Seattle 2-1 to win the NFC West. Arizona under, Atlanta over, Tampa Bay under, Chicago over. And our guy, VR, has the entire world on the Dallas Cowboys. Oh my goodness. NFC East, Dallas minus 120. NFC North, Minnesota 2-1. NFC South, New Orleans minus 105. San Francisco to make a repeat and win the NFC West. He's going under 8.5 in Chicago, over 9.5 in Dallas, under 9 in Green Bay, which I agree with, and over 6.5 for Gianni Detroit's Lions. He has a couple leans under 7.5 with Arizona, and under 7.5 with Atlanta. The Dallas Cowboys to win the Super Bowl. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to bet on it tonight. The NFC Conference Edition, over 2 hours long. We're going to be back next week with the AFC Conference. I'm going to see if we don't do a different format. And then 2 weeks, we're going to have the regular Bet On It show back, going through the entire week 1 of the NFL. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. Any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to tweet me. I'm always open to some criticism.